You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 33. Today I'll be talking to Nwadiogbu. Alright, so my name's Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes at artaffairs.podcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can also connect with the show on Instagram and Facebook at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist Nwadiogbu. Ken creates work that is this interesting blend of hyperrealism and more traditional contemporary art that he refers to as contemporealism. We talk about this unique subgenre his work fits into, as well as his journey through engineering school to eventually become an artist, his upcoming solo show at ThinkSpace, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Nwadiogbu. Ken, welcome to the show, man. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let's dive into your background a bit. From what I've read, you were born and spent most of your life in Lagos, Nigeria, which I believe is the largest city in Nigeria. What is that area like where you grew up? Is it sort of a dense, urban city environment?
Yeah, I'd say it's like the New York of Lagos, of Nigeria. Sorry, It's like a lot of trading. You meet different people from different parts of life. You may, it's like one of the most populous cities in Africa. So you have like loads of, people with different culture, different ideas, different, vibes just coming together to make this Lagos city, this echo story. We call it echo. So it's like the echo story. So it's pretty dope. It's cool. It's cool. I think like in Nigeria, it's like in New York. From what I hear, it's like, if, when you get to the big city, then, the challenges are more, the exposure is more. So I think that's how Lagos is. Once you're in Lagos, you're into the system and you just try to work it out. Yeah.
So it's like a cultural center for Nigeria.
Yeah, it's like a cultural center. It's amazing. It's a beautiful place.
Very cool. So what kind of work did like your family or your parents do when you were growing up?
So my dad was a doctor. My mom is she worked as an insurer. Then she started working for the government, National Health Insurance Scheme. So, my whole family was sort of tailored towards this medical lifestyle. My mom is working in the medical sector. My dad is working in the medical sector. My brother is working in the medical sector.
So how did you go the other way? I mean, you went complete opposite direction.
You can imagine when I came to my mom and I was like, I don't want to do engineering. I want to do art. And she's like, you kidding, man?
Did you have much exposure to the arts growing up? Like, did you have any friends that were artists or anybody like in your close circle that were related to the arts?
Yeah, I started having, when I started, at first I used to draw cartoons a lot, right? And draw my books. I love drawing my books. When the teacher is teaching, I'm just like, doodling the teacher and my friends laugh about it. Yeah. And it got to this point where, I got into university and, my university to my parents' house was almost 3 hours away. Yeah. And I couldn't stay in hostel in university because then I was being troubled by cultists. They wanted to bring me in. They wanted to, because they felt I was talented. So they wanted someone talented in their team. And so I had to be coming from home. So while every 3-hour journey from home to school, you'd see, pictures or paintings by different artists on the roadside. So every time you go in straight to my school, you're seeing pictures of paintings from different artists, of different celebrities on the roadside. So I think that was basically one of my biggest exposure into the art scene, right? Seeing these street side artists and trying to question why they are in the street and why Picasso has to be, where he is. That conversation, that feeling, because I love to paint, then I just, that was one of the things that inspired me to go into, to even be more interested in the artwork.
Well, I read this charming story talking about how you first started to really explore and dive deeper into your artistic side because of a girl, that you were rather enamored with, and wanted to impress because I guess she was into the arts. So tell me about that. Like, what was that?
So while I was doodling different pictures of my teachers, I came across this amazing artist called Kevin Okafor. Right. So in my 100 level in university, it was a friend of mine who introduced me to this artist. At first, I entered university, wanted to study civil engineering, right? Because basically, you can't study anything aside engineering, law, and medicine in Nigeria. That's the top courses. That's the top profession. They see that as once you're studying it, you are going to be successful, in quotes, right? So while I was in my 100 level studying civil engineering, we have this overnight reading center where everybody just comes to read throughout the midnight. We're in preparation for a test or for an exam. So we're preparing for a test. And while I'm reading, because my friends see me draw, see me doodle around, and so they came straight, they rushed to me and I was like, yo, there is somebody somewhere drawing the dean of my university, and it is nothing you've seen before. And I was really interested. So I was like, oh, take me there. So I left my book, left everything, and we went straight to the where the person was. And very big paper, he was drawing the dean of my university. And that was the first time I saw a hyper-realistic piece. And I was interested. I draw, but I never knew that there was an extent that it starts to become so real that you start to doubt if it's a drawing. And then I got interested, and he gave me this person to search for, Kevin Okafor, and I went back and I searched for him, and oh my mind was open. So from there, I started trying to learn how to draw. Then I met the lady, beautiful lady on Facebook. And so at that time I didn't have a phone. I usually go to the cyber cafe to text people, have conversations, and so I'm going to this cafe, always having a conversation with her on Facebook. And I realized that I needed to do something to like woo her, to get her, interested in me. So I started trying a bunch of things. You have no idea that I'm happy I tried them, because then I'm using them at this point of my life. Yeah. So I checked her interests, and she likes music. And I'm like, I can't sing because my secondary school, because I couldn't go high note, they had to put me in bass. So I was more like, no. So I knew I couldn't sing. So what I did was, I could learn how to play the guitar, because my brother was playing the guitar at that time. So so anytime I hear him play, I go to the parlor, the sitting room, and I actually stare at him and ask him some questions. Oh, how are you moving this? How are you moving this? And then he told me he was learning from YouTube. So I'd go to YouTube, cyber cafe, try and learn one or two chords, go back, master it with my brother's guitar, take, go to the cyber cafe, tell the owner of the cyber cafe to video me, and I'm playing the weird songs, playing "You're Beautiful"
Oh
and
my
stuff.
God.
Yeah, sent it to her. She didn't really like it. She didn't really like it. She was like, oh, beautiful, but I knew I needed to do more. So while I was learning guitar, I started checking more interests. Right? So she likes dance. I used to dance. I need to make a video for her. Then I got into the part where it was the main thing, which is art. And I was like, I think I can do this. So I tell my cousin, Onyeka, who is in London. At that time, I've never been to London. I tell her that there is this artist, Kevin Okafor. I want you to buy all his materials down to the Q-tip. I could buy Q-tip in Lagos, but I felt, nah, that must be a different Q-tip. So she sends these materials down, and I start learning with it until, yeah.
That's amazing. So I mean, you kind of owe her a lot because she sparked that in you. That's amazing. So I want to step back. So you went into school for civil and environmental engineering. So why engineering? You said that was one of several kind of well-regarded pursuits, and that people sort of nudge you into that. Was art not an option, or were you not interested in art at that point?
I was very interested in art, but I felt it was not possible. When everyone tells you like it's not possible, and you just go with the flow, until eventually you stop and ask yourself, why is it not possible? What stops you from actually practicing art? Well, why is the society trying to push you into practicing what they want you to practice? But by that time, I was already in civil engineering, and I felt, there's this honor to finish school because your parents are funding they fund your school fees. So I was like, it would be cool to do civil engineering, still study civil engineering in school while practicing art. In that way, I gave myself a goal that before I graduate, I needed to be something, or I needed to start something as an artist that can, sustain me even after I graduated. And, that's how, I was pumping my time into the art and into civil engineering. I had less sleep. I remember I always sleep in the car when we are going to school and coming back, because how my time was is, when we're going to school, because it's a 3-hour drive, so I take a nap in the car, get to school, go to my lecture hall, take a quick nap till the lecturer comes, sort out school, finish up school, head back home. That's another 3-hour drive. Take my nap in the car, get back home, take a little nap. By like 10 p.m., wake up and start work. So I work all night till the next morning. And that's how my day and night was shifted.
Wow, that's crazy. That's insane. That's got to be so hard. How did you go about like teaching yourself art? Like you're self-taught, so you didn't have any formal instruction. What did you do to learn?
A lot of mistakes, a lot of mistakes, a lot of critics. I remember when most of my friends were like, this is shit. And I'm like, nah, man, I want to do art to an extent that nobody thinks is shit. That, you appreciate it for, because it is a part of me, it has value, because it is, I'm pouring my time, my emotion, my feeling, my story, my adventures, down into the canvas. So, yeah, so to me, it was like, it was the determination to want to do what I love doing, and want people to see it how I see it. Because it's one thing creating something you love. It's another thing for people to understand what you created and to see it exactly how you see it. So that was my plan. That was my goal. I needed to do that thing I love, because I felt alone in the world. I had, I had loads of depression, and art was like my getaway haven. It took me away from that sport, and it made me so engrossed in it. I wanted to know more. I wanted to create more. I created and created until I mastered the craft, and that's why I have my own way of drawing my faces and creating my faces.
Was it hard for you to continue working on an engineering degree, even though your heart was in art?
Very hard. Very hard. Mm. When I entered school, I was an A student. I was like, and when I studied art, yeah, it wasn't that bad, but yeah, I graduated pretty good. I was supposed to start work as a civil engineer, but I was like, nah. I needed to drop my certificate with my parents, hug them and tell them, now I'm doing what I want to do. Now I want to go for something that I care about. And, that's where I started out.
Well, because you even started showing your work before you graduated. And 2016 was a pretty big landmark show for you at Amenka Gallery, the Insanity Group show. So how did that come together, and how did you get involved in that?
Okay, that's an interesting story. That's a very, very interesting story. So I'm in my house for the first time. I decide, let me create because before. While I started drawing people I knew, then I started having clients who say, oh, can draw me, or you can draw my wife. And, people started paying for it. And, little money here and there, I'd use it to, fund myself in school, buy some things, and, it got to that point where I'm like, I'm tired of creating people's faces. I want to create something I like for the first time. Something that represents me for the first time. So I created this work called Unleashed, because it was basically me trying to tear away from my own, from where I was before, from my closed doors. I wanted to just come out into the world and, explode my talent and my creativity. And I did that piece and I put it on Instagram. That was when I started messing with I got a small phone and I was like, yeah. So I put it on Instagram. I opened my Instagram page. I never knew what Instagram was. I never had any idea. So I put on Instagram and I'm on my own and I get this text message and it says, Baba God don't answer your prayer, which means like God has answered your prayer. And I'm like, who's this? And apparently he's a gallerist over in London, Tafeta Gallery. Yeah, Mr. Ayo Adeyinka. And he's like, he's coming to Nigeria and he wants to buy one piece for me. One piece for me? Is he of your wife? Is he of your daughter? Is he of your son? And he's like, no, create something for yourself and I'm coming to get it. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can't do that. So I go back and I'm thought, what am I going to create? And I figured out that, while I was, while I was drowning in thought process, the kind of conversation I was going to start, the kind of conversation I was going to create, I just thought, how am I feeling? I'm feeling like I want to, I'm like drowning, but at the same time, I want to come out, right? I want to like save myself. So I did this piece called No, where the lady was sort of like using her teeth to tear the paper. And I used that representation of, when my granddad, granddad, his teeth was falling out. So I said, what if teeth actually fall out? What if old age actually happens because you've just been learning and gnawing through life, learning and tearing down boundaries. So that was the concept of the work. And I created the work and he comes over to Nigeria and he's like, and I'm in church because my parents are we are Christians. And my parents are like, my mom is an evangelist. My dad is a pastor. My dad was a pastor. And I'm in church and I receive a text message again, Baba God don't answer your prayer. So I knew it was him. So he says, come to a place. He is Lagos now. I should come and bring the peace. And I'm in church. I'm looking at my mom just close to me, and I'm like, "Hey, mom, a gallery just told me to go to a hotel to see him and show him a piece." And she's like, "Hotel? Nah, stay here. Focus on Christ. Tell him tomorrow." So I tell him tomorrow, and he's like, "No, he's traveling back to London tomorrow. I needed to see him immediately today." And I go back to my mom. Mind you, I didn't have funds to take myself from that over to his. And so I needed my mom to approve so I can say, "Yo, I need money to go." So she didn't approve. I went back to him, texted him that, "Please, I'm so far away from you. I might not be able to make it." And then he's like, "What's the problem? Is it the taxi? I'll pay the taxi." Immediately he said that. I was like, "Yeah, that's good." So I told my mom, "Yo, I'm going to the house. I want to do something at home." She's like, "Okay, cool." So I take the key, go home, open the house, pack my works, close the house, give the key to my neighbor. That time Uber was not there, so I had to get a taxi. Enter the yellow taxi, head straight there, brought the works out, met him, he gave me cash for the Uber. He says, "Open it," and he opened it, and his eyes lit up.
Oh,
and
wow.
that was when I knew that, creating something that really matters to you, people can feel it. It's not like, people know when it's deep, when it's from you. People know when it's from your heart. And he loved it, and he was like, "What's your price?" And I was like, "My price?" Now, at first, I don't know how to convert it now, but at first I was selling roughly, I was doing client works for roughly 20,000 naira. And at that point, I went almost like 5 times, 10 times more. No, 10 times more, yeah. And I told him, because I saw a piece in a gallery and I saw the price. I was like, "Okay, let me try." And I told him 300,000, and he's like, "No problem." And he sent me the money. And you could imagine my heart. That was the first time in my life I knew that, I could support myself and my family, and, I could do something. Something was happening. Something I never fathomed was going to happen, happened. And I got interested. I got so interested in art. I got so interested in telling my story from there. And, that's how it happened for me. So I met him, got the piece, showed me to his friends, then I knew that galleries existed. Then I knew that collectors existed. Then I knew that the art world was a world that artists and people were there. And I'm like, okay, now I found my family. Now I found where I belong, so that's,
nice.
Yeah.
And so at that point, how did you end up connecting with Omenka Gallery? Was it that knowledge that you got from that experience?
Yeah. So one of the collectors, Frank Momo, he was so excited to, he bought 3 more of my pieces the next day. He bought 3 more of my pieces the next day and asked me, "Do I want to have a solo show?" And I'm like, that's a pretty good idea. So he took me to Omenka Gallery, but I knew that I did not have the amount of resources to hold a solo show. This was going to be the first hyperrealism exhibition in Lagos. This was before this Olu hyperclassical trended, which is hyperrealism. So I knew I couldn't do that alone. So I told him, let's have something called an Artist Connect. Let's gather artists from all over Lagos, which happened to be the biggest, largest gathering of artists in Lagos. Let's gather artists all over Lagos and let's converse with them, and let's pick 9 different artists that can join with me, making it 10 artists, and let's rather do a group exhibition of hyper-realistic art instead of a solo exhibition. And that's when I met Arinze, and that's when I met Oscar, and that's when I met loads of my friends now who, followed me to do that Insanity exhibition at Omenka Gallery. And that tells, our history was built from that.
Very cool. So it sounds like that was a sort of a launching pad for you. Were your parents supportive of your move away from engineering and into the arts? Were they okay with that?
I don't think any Nigerian parents will be supportive. I was angry at first. I was so upset at first, but then I realized that, I get them. I get them. They've never been exposed to the art world. They don't know what it is. It took my dad years before he realized that the money I was, having, and, the help I was giving was from art. He felt I was doing something else that was illegal, and he was scared. But I kept, it's art, it's art, it's art. It can happen, an artist can take his community and build his community. And that's where the Ubuntu came about. An artist can take his community and build his community. It's possible. Yes, happened before, and I'm happy that, I'm humbled and honored to, do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, you graduated from school in 2017, and then just a couple of years later, you ended up having your first solo show called Contemporalism in London. How did you connect with Brick Lane and start to gain exposure outside of Nigeria?
So I'm creating more pieces. At first, I connected with this gallery in London called Creative Debut, and so they did a couple of shows with me here. So that gave me a bit of ground. And I did this piece called Where Do We Go From Here? And Swiss Beats saw the piece and he went off, and he messaged me, he posted it on his story, he posted it on his page, and someone that came from his page hit me up, Premier Art Solutions. Actually, a lot of people, a lot of galleries hit me up, but I vibed more with Premier Art Solutions. We had conversations more, and that drew me closer to them because I love loyalty. I love being with people who I connect with, rather than just being with any gallery because of the what I'm gaining from them. So it was more of I can talk to him, I can vibe with him, and we started off the connection together, and we started up a contract, and he says for 1 year, I can manage you and I can put you in, I can give a solo show and certain other things. And I was like, that's amazing. We started and, we did what we did, and, Brick Lane happened and Monica Art Fair happened at the same time in the same space. So yeah.
That's awesome. And so Contemporalism was the name of the show, but that's also the label that you give to your work in general, which is sort of this blending of hyperrealism and contemporary art. So I guess, what do you think sets your work apart from more traditional hyperrealism?
I did hyperrealism a lot until I needed to express myself aside detailing. Then I got stuck. It's like an addiction to just get the details. It's an addiction. To break out of that addiction, it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of, willpower to actually break out of that addiction. And I needed to break out of that addiction because I figured out that it necessarily is not about creating exactly how the person looks like. It's creating how you see the person, right? A lot of people see, nature as nature. They see a person as a person. They see a black man as a black man, right? I feel the reason why, people are interested in what artists have to create is because they see these things differently. And I see it differently. I don't want to represent a person as a person with his clothes and everything. I want to represent them differently. And I think, trying to represent them differently gives artists an understanding of even, what it means to be a human being, what it means to, to exist in this world, right? Aside your fashion, aside how you look, what else can I say about you? What else do you embody? Those questions are what inspired me to, leave hyperrealism and start this contemporary realism. That was one. And I wanted to work with colors.
Okay.
Or I wanted to work with charcoal too. And I wanted to do my 3-dimension. So I had to find a way to sort of mash everything together to form this one, creative idea. And that's how, and I would have just done that and not called it contemporary realism. That was easy for me to do. But, there are thousands of Nigerian artists who needed to understand that there was a different form of art aside hyperrealism, right? You can still do your hyperrealism, but you can add other elements to it to make it even stronger and more powerful. And, that contemporary realism, I had a workshop where different young artists came and I explained to them about the concept of contemporary realism. You're a hyperrealist, it's fine, but imagine you can express more and still maintain, your addiction of hyperrealism. You can actually do that. And that was what, formed contemporary realism, and that was what formed, the show itself.
Yeah, and it's interesting because your particular flavor of contemporary realism involves this sort of cutaway motif where you have, whether it's torn paper or a cutout of a scene of something really idyllic at the front, but then underneath you really see the true nature of the person. And I feel that's exactly what you sort of described about you wanting to represent a person's interior and actually who they are inside instead of just the surface, right?
The outer. Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. So, your work also kind of deals with some pretty important and powerful issues, everything from, African culture and Black power to like police brutality, gender equality. And obviously you have a strong sense of social and political commentary and activism. Is activism something that you feel strongly about? And is it important to you that your art has a purpose in that way?
Late Fela Anikulapo Kuti, who is the founder of Afrobeats, the father of Afrobeats actually. He said something. He said, art is a way of life. You cannot be in a place of war and you are painting dollies or, it's a way of life. It's a representation of who you are, right? And when you understand that art is the way of life, you tend to look at your life and question your life and look at all the experiences you've had and question all these experiences from my friends, me, my family. When you look at all these things, you start to, create your art and create your narrative from all these things, right? And my experience is not an experience of fun and laughter and joy and happiness. Nah, man, my experience is an experience of survival. We surviving. That's like every every African youth's goal is to survive, right? And I figured out that people needed to know this. People needed to know that these things were happening to us. People needed to know that this what we go through. It's like when I was watching Euphoria, I could relate to it because it was relatable. And I want my art to relate to people. I want people to see my art and, feel empathy and put yourself in that situation. I understand what we're going through, right? Don't just think that, Africa has a one story, Africa is a single story. No, we go through a lot. There's so many things happening around us. And these are the conversations we try to start. So it's basically just my way of life. It's what I go through. I'm not in the hip hop scene. I'm in the Afrobeat scene. I'm not in the happy scene. I'm in the survival scene. And, these are the conversations I try to put. This police brutality, because I was brutalized by the police, not once, not twice, not 3 times. Right? Gender equality, because my sister has been, they've looked down on her because she's a girl, right? So certain things that go through that I experience, I try to bring that into light.
That's incredible. I mean, I guess, and now that your art has gotten more attention outside of Africa and Nigeria, and sort of elevated to the world stage, I guess, is it important to you, or how important is it to you to be able to share the Nigerian and the African experience and the problems that you see in Nigerian society with the rest of the world? It almost makes you sort of like an ambassador,
At first, I didn't know how important it was. I didn't know what it could do. I didn't know the power it had. Right? I didn't know why I was even doing it in the first place. I just knew that I wanted to tell my story, because as every artist, is our deepest desire to tell our story to the world. And while I was creating it, I figured out that, people needed to know these stories, because people actually stay reacting to these stories. People stay, sending feedbacks. People stay trying to help. Oh, is there any other Nigerian artists out there? Let me help them. Let me give them a show. Oh, is there any other Nigerian person out there? Oh, is there Nigerian this? Is there, people stay paying attention and stay trying to, bring, their services, down to Nigeria to help a lot of people, grow up and, be strong and be able to fend and help their community around them. So I did not know how important it was till all this started happening. And then I understood that, this was an important thing I did. This is the thing that gives me, so much joy to be able to see that, I'm able to change people's ideology, people's mindset of, certain things. And, I know people will say it's cheesy, but wake people up.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Wake people up to the reality of, Black people, not just in diaspora, but also living in Africa.
For sure. Yeah. No, I think that's one of the, as bad as 2020 was overall, I think one thing positive that came out of it was a lot of the bad events that happened woke a lot of people up. I think a lot of people became more aware of a lot of the injustice and a lot of the negativity that was going around and started to speak up against it. I guess, those types of things can also be very polarizing. Obviously you've gotten a lot of people supporting you. Have you had any experiences where people have spoken against some of the message that you're putting out there?
Yeah, all the time.
Really?
All the time. Yeah. Some people say, yo, take this down. Sometimes in my comment section, people will always kick against good things, won't they? Yeah. I think that's just I accept it. I have my open hands. I accept even, crazy people. I accept people who do not understand the concept. It's an easy concept.
Right.
It's the concept of love. That's all. It's just love. The moment you are awake to know that, the society close to you is as much important as yourself. Because the moment you understand that affects you too, and you affect them, then you come together so that you don't affect each other, negatively, so that there's just a positive growth. And that is what I try to preach. So people will always kick against it. People will always comment shit on my page. People will always send me DMs. People will always try to blackmail me too.
Oh, wow.
People will always do, crazy things. But, the main thing is that we rise above all that, and we continue to tell our stories to the world. It's
great that you're able to not let that affect you or discourage you, because I think, your messages are very important and they're relevant, and it's important that these messages get out into the world. So it's good that you're not silenced by some of that negativity. And you're right. I mean, it seems like a very simple message, like just love everybody, be compassionate, care about the people around you. Like how are those bad things? But some people, so let's dive a little bit into the mediums that you use. So you mentioned earlier, you use charcoal a lot for the hyper realistic aspects or elements of your work, and then you also use acrylic for a lot of the more colorful stuff in the foreground. Is that sort of how that breakdown works? Is the acrylic for the foreground sort of elements, and then you use the charcoal for the background, more hyper-realistic elements?
Okay, so how it started was I started drawing faces, trying to come out of the paper. That was when I was very, very violent in my conversation. I was like, yo, this is me. This is what we're facing. And I was screaming. All my subjects were screaming, like, pay attention to me.
Yeah.
But, along the line, I decided to, find different ways of having that same conversation, but in a more matured way, so that people, get it, so that people feel it. I don't want them to get scared I want them to embrace it and understand it. So I started with, trying to tear people away from the paper. And then I started trying to evolve that. How else can I create my pieces? And it's almost like every solo show for me is like a reinvention. It's like a different idea. It's like a different conversation. It's like the same conversation, but it's like a different feeling. So after my show in Think Space, I decided, I needed to, make my conversations more subtle and, pass across the message too. And what better subtle element than paint? So I decided, what? I needed to learn how to paint. Then I stopped and I said, why do I need to learn how to paint? Why do I need to learn how someone else paints? And I'm like, I want to paint how I want to paint. So I started thinking. So I started trying, different colors. If you see my earlier works last year, you see each work, you can see different colors like purple, green, blue, and all in one, just trying to create the scene. And you figure out my later works in the year was just one color with different shades. Because while I was trying to combine all these colors, I figured out that, this is not me. What am I doing? This is not me. I needed to find something. And I figured out that I loved drawing and shading, and painting is almost like shading, just black and white, shadow and highlights. So if I can bring that drawing, is just like painting, right? So if I can bring that same energy into my paintings, it will probably go smoothly. So I decided, let me draw my faces because I love drawing faces. I am obsessed with drawing faces. Faces make me connect deeper to people. I tend to see people, deeper than their clothing or their lifestyle. I tend to see people deeper, and I love the feeling, because then you can't just get angry with someone because you understand that your reality might not follow his own reality. So you try to understand his own reality so that you can come to a compromise where you understand yourselves. So I started drawing faces, and I said, let me paint the outside, the background, right? So because the paint could drip down into the charcoal, so I took I took a newspaper. After drawing the faces, I sort of covered the faces with a newspaper and tape just around that newspaper so I can paint and the paint does not drip down and stain the charcoal. After I was done painting, for me to remove that newspaper, and then I saw that white line that sort of like surrounded this thing because of the tape. So the paint could not get to that point where the tape that was on the canvas. So that was a mistake that went so good. It was so beautiful. I saw it and I was like, that is beautiful. And then I did more and I did more and I did more. And now I'm obsessed with paints. I buy paints. I buy weird paints. I just buy paints, like different paint with reflex paint, this paint, that paint. And I'm just I make sketches and I'm painting. I'm doing this and I'm painting my clothes, all my dress, all my shirts are painted on, so yeah.
That's amazing. So, obviously you have a heavy focus on faces, like you said. Do you take your own like reference photos for your work? Like, do you take any kind of photos of the people that you draw?
Yeah. I have. I sort of put them in an archive. I see my friend. Oh, yeah, stay. I can use my phone. I can use my camera. Take picture. Just drop it in a folder. Take picture. Drop in a folder. When I'm trying to work, I try to sometimes I use the face of the person I'm cutting out, and sometimes I just feel this face works so good in this scene. This is exactly the kind of conversation I'm trying to put, right? It's either somebody's drowning in social media or somebody's woke and, awake and scared,
Does it help, I guess, if you know the person that is behind the face? Like,
I know everybody. Everybody, I'm creative. I have a knowledge of who they are, because then it's very necessary, because you need to know who you are drawing. Like I say, it's more of like the eye is a very intricate tool. And as a hyperrealist, I'm going to create exactly how the eye is, right? So it has to connect. I have to connect with the person. I have to know who the person is so that I don't, mess up the conversation. I don't mess up my narrative. So I know the person. I try to, they are always my friends and they always have their own stories and they always have their own experiences. And most time I just use the faces of the people I snap and just put it there because I feel you are perfect for this story. Your silhouette is perfect for this story. So let me just, work on it. And sometimes I don't structure my subjects. Like I have my phone and I'm like, oh, okay. And I snap a picture and, and eventually I start going through all these pictures that, that represent my life. And, I start picking, oh, okay, this goes well with, the kind of conversation I'm trying to bring and I'm trying to build. Yeah. So I think of my life. I think of my history. I think of my story and I build from that.
Okay, and I guess once you've kind of settled on what you want to paint, as far as like a composition, and you have your composition sort of figured out, how do you typically approach like working on the final piece? Do you start with certain parts of the anatomy, like the eyes, or do you go from top to bottom? Like, how do you tend to approach the rendering?
I first start with the charcoal. I first start with the drawing. So because I'm right-handed, so I like going from the top left and just walk down. So I don't smudge my canvas, so I don't mess the charcoal up because it's hard to work a charcoal. Really hard to work charcoal. And knowing I don't use graphite at all, it makes it so difficult to even get the lighter parts with charcoal. So I don't want to mess, a part I just finished up. So I have to work from up and go down and work down. Okay. Sometimes I'm so excited to work on the eyes that I start with the eyes first, then I can work. But most of the time I would work top left and down, finish the charcoal work, take my white paint and paint around that figure and then have these colorful paints, just take the whole background and have this conversation of, having a conscious person in a society like mine.
Okay, that's really cool. And a lot of your work do tend to be pretty large. I guess what do you like about working at such a large size?
I think it's because of the kind of works I was exposed to when I studied art. Kevin Okafor works on large pieces. Kehinde Wiley works on large pieces. Toyo Jitola works on large pieces. Kerjit Marshall works on large pieces. So I was like, I still liking large works from an early stage. So, and I feel I get to put a lot of me in these large pieces. But, funny enough, when I start working on small pieces for this show, oh my God. Oh my God. I never knew the beauty of small works till I started working. I think it's because of the paint. I just think it's because of the paint. So you can have like these tiny brushes and you're like putting all the details. Yeah, that's fun too. That's fun too. But I love large pieces. I feel you can't miss them. You can't skip them. You can't just pass them. You can't just, go past them. Before, I felt if I draw small works, it's easy to just miss. But now I think with the paintings, you can't even miss the small works. You can't miss the large works. Like they draw you closer to the kind of narrative I'm trying to pull. And that's the best part of it.
Okay. And I guess, since your work does involve several different kinds of mediums from acrylic to charcoal, do you work on multiple pieces at once or do you tend to focus on one at a time until it's finished?
It depends. Yeah. I don't have like a routine. I actually never even know the size of the canvas before I even start. Right. I don't know. I just work. Sometimes I can do the charcoal here, spray it with a fixative and, just drop it and work on the second one before I come back to paint that. Or sometimes I just finish one piece. Especially when I'm doing time lapse. I just finish like one piece, finish it, clear it, before I go to the next piece. So it depends. There's no like format to how I work.
Okay. No, that totally makes sense. Do you have a dedicated, I guess, studio space?
Yeah, I have one in Lagos.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to travel, so I think my studio is everywhere. If you put me on the street, I'm gonna paint on the street. If you put me on the roof, I'll paint on the roof. I don't think anything is gonna stop me from painting, man. It's like it's already deep into my system, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
No, that's really cool. And so we talked about this a little bit. I wanna dive a little bit more into, I guess, the art community in Nigeria, because I do feel like there's more and more. I'm seeing a lot of like more and more incredible art coming out of Nigeria than I ever have before. So I'm curious, like, what is the art community like in Lagos and I guess in Nigeria in general?
It's growing. Yeah. Before I even started art, I don't think if you asked any random Nigerian who is a visual artist, I don't think they would know, right? Because the art world was quite closed to, you know, the collectors and the art lovers and the people who are aware of it. Then you have things that come up like ArtX. ArtX Lagos is basically the biggest art fair in West Africa. That happened, and that brought like, they had advertisement, they had like billboards. And you just be driving in your car and you see a very big billboard of an art event. So they started to wake up. They started to know that, you know, we needed to take this out there. People out there needed to see art. They needed to enjoy art. They needed to have a conversation with art. And, you know, you had other galleries, smaller galleries streaming up. You have Radio Gallery. You have Retro Africa Gallery that I work with in Africa. And you have these galleries coming up and, you know, trying to pick up, you know, young artists and, you know, heat up the internet, you know, heat up the digital cyberspace, heat up, you know, advertisements, you know, just to push art out there so that people can actually see and appreciate it. Because it's so weird that art used to be so, you know, appreciated in Nigeria before. So how the whole country sort of like went off, I still don't understand it. I think it's all that series of imperialistic rulers and people who didn't care about the society. I think they are the cause of it. And, you know, it's our duty as young artists to, you know, bring back that, you know, that energy, bring back that vibe, you know, what Benin one did years ago, you know, bring it back, you know, let people know that, you know, artists too, have a career. Artists too, we have conversations that we want to share. We have, there are so many things we want to talk about. And also you can enjoy art. You can see beauty. You can learn too. Art is very educative. It's a beautiful way to learn new things. Imagine learning new things by enjoying something you see instead of like reading letters and words. You're seeing beauty and you're learning. I think that's a beautiful way to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess since you first became an artist, you know, we were talking earlier about how society tends to frown upon art as a career and not a viable career. Has that changed since since you became an artist? Is it more acceptable?
I have to ask young artist parents. I have to ask couple of people's parents. Oh, does your mother want you to do art? So, when I do that, I'll give you the feedback. But yeah, I should hope. My parents are so excited about it.
That's great.
I know some parents in Lagos, you know, they bring their kids to my studio and they're like, oh, train my daughter, train my son. You know, I sort of give them tasks, you know, learn this, learn that. You know, I have a lot of young people come to my studio almost basically every day. You know, I have conversations with them about the art world. So yeah, I feel, I have a feeling that, you know, there's, you know, it's changing. It's a bit slow, but, you know, it's steady, you know, slow and steady wins the race. So
yeah, I guess what advice would you give a young person in Nigeria who wants to become a professional artist? Like, what would you tell them?
Don't stop, man. I could have stopped a long time ago. Like, don't stop. If art is what you want to do, it's messy. It's a lot of headache being an artist sometimes. It's a lot of people. They talk down. They say, oh, yeah, enjoy it now. It will not last. Or they have these kind of conversations. That sort of like wants to bring you down. That wants to depress you or wants to take you away from art. Just don't listen to them. Like, listen, but pick what you need to pick and use it to fuel your engine and even fire harder. A lot of people say I couldn't do it. A lot of people kept, I know I've not even done it, but people are listening. That is the best thing I could ask for. People are interested. They want to know. I don't care if I sell out or if I don't. I just care for you to understand the kind of conversation I'm trying to lay out there, because that is the main goal. That's the main thing. And if people can understand it, that is beautiful.
It's powerful, yeah.
So a lot of people are going to talk down on you, but the kind of works you are creating is you. It has value to you. And if it has value to you, that's all you need. I was listening to Matthew Cunningham. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name. He's an actor. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Yeah, I was listening to him. He was making he said this thing. He said, you can get happy and you can get sad. If you win, you're happy. If you lose, you're sad. But one thing that should always be constant is joy. And the only thing that can bring you joy is doing what you know and what you love. So if you are sad, but you still have joy, I think that is what trumps everything.
Yeah, no, that's important. So yeah, let's talk about your new show. So we teased it a little bit. You have a new show coming up at ThinkSpace called Ubuntu, which is, I believe, your U.S. debut, and that's going to open on March 6th. So how did you first connect with Andrew and ThinkSpace?
Yeah, Andrew, man, it was surreal. I screamed. He doesn't know that I saw his message and I was like, what? Oh, he's an amazing man. He's amazing. Oh my God. I did a group show with ThinkSpace last 2 years. LAX, the LAX series. So 3 group exhibitions. Went well. I messaged ThinkSpace then. They were like, amazing works. So I knew they loved my works, but I never in 1,000 years knew that I was going to have a debut solo with them, man. It's a beautiful thing to know. And I'm enjoying the experience, Machi hit me up and he was like, I love your new works. How many do you have? I was like, oh, I have a couple. It's like, do you think you can do a show 2021? I was like, hell yeah, man. Man, bring it on. I'll be your best artist. I'll be the best artist you've ever seen, man. Like, yeah, such an amazing opportunities. An opportunity that I remember when I posted about, I put the show, I put it on my story and put it on my page. And loads of Nigerian artists, they messaged me and they were like, oh, this is inspiring, man. You just inspired me. And I love that, So that, I told Andrew that he doesn't even know what he's doing, because he's pumping up more Nigerian artists to focus on art. And that is what's important. Tell our story to the world. Let them know us, let them hear us, let them feel us, let them, I see a lot of artists who tell their own stories, but very few Nigerians who tell our story. So this is, pushing them to tell more of our story to the world. Yeah. So Andrew hit me up, said, solo show 2021. I'm like, I'm down, man. I'm going to give you the best. I'm going to give you everything from my heart. And I still have more to give. It's so exciting. And, I'm happy, everything is coming together. Andrew loves the pieces. I love the pieces. We are excited for the show, and I can only wish that every other person see what I want them to see, and even more.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the show's title is Ubuntu, which I believe roughly translates to "I am because we are." I guess so. What's the theme of the show, and what's like the specific story you're wanting to tell with that series?
I've always been very my mom, she's an amazing woman, and she taught me love. And love is a very important topic, because you need to learn it. You need to know it to be able to understand people, right? You need to love somebody enough to want to understand them, right? So I understood love at a young age, but I figured out that people around me did not understand the concept. And then I stumbled on this Mandela's conversation when he was having a speech in South Africa one time, and he mentioned Ubuntu. And he made reference to Ubuntu being love, right? You need to love your neighbor to be able to connect with your neighbor, right? And not just connect, right? Connect in such a way that you are able to build your community and the community around you and the people around you. So that has always been in my head. That has always, been, always, even in my show with Brick Lane, that was also part of the conversation there. Love, Ubuntu. So when I explained, this series of works I did last year to Andrew, and I mentioned Ubuntu, and Andrew was like, "What is Ubuntu?" And I was excited to tell him what Ubuntu was, and he was like, "Nah, that has to be the title for the show." And I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm happy to, call it Ubuntu, because it sort of like, it lets you ask the question, what am I doing to build my community? What am I doing to build my society? It's obvious that the government they're not going to pay attention to us completely, right? And especially in Africa, they don't pay attention to us at all. So we have ourselves to build. We only have ourselves. We don't. The government is not going to pay. He's not going to sort us out. Nobody's going to sort us out. No, which person is going to wake up and say, "Yo, let me sponsor you with 10 million or something." We have ourselves. If we cannot build ourselves together, then we're in trouble. Then we're just going to be slaves to this government, these imperialistic rulers, these dictators. So the concept of Ubuntu, after looking at, last year's xenophobic attack, last year's, throwing immigrants away from the US, Brexit, so many, events, stereotype with coronavirus and this and that. Then you have the police brutality. Then you have these two parties fighting. It was only reasonable for me to want to now, at this moment, talk about the reason why we need to coexist together, the reason why we need to share resources together. There's no time for, there's no, if you're doing individualism, is good, but then you should always remember that if you're doing individualism, you are doing it to better your community. You're not just doing it because you're being selfish. Right? And I feel, coexisting together, being together, building together is the best form of growth, right? Yeah. Because the top is not for one person, the top is for everybody. Why can't we as people come together, leave these dictators, leave these bad people, and, build ourselves to a point where, we can, look at ourselves and, love ourselves even more and build better future for our kids and generations to come.
No, that's an important message. I mean, I feel like, a lot of people don't get that. And I mean, it really comes down to a rising tide raises all ships. If you benefit the entire community, then you'll also improve yourself. Like, it's a pretty basic concept. Like, if everybody improves, then you also improve. So let's strive for that, How many pieces are you going to have in the show?
20 pieces.
Oh, wow. That's big. That's a big show.
Yeah. Different sizes, different large sizes, small sizes. Oh, the small works are beautiful, man.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the show.
With COVID and everything, do you think you'll be able to make the opening, or are you going to do it virtual?
I'm trying to. I really want to. I really want to, man. I've never been to US. I've never been to the US. I've done shows in the US. I've never been to the US. So it's like, and it'll mean a lot to me, to see that, I'm in US, like none of my family, it will mean a lot, to everyone, the people that, are around me that, they see me in that spot and they believe that they can get to that spot too. So yeah, so I wish I would be there. I'm doing everything I can to try and make it to my opening. But if it doesn't happen, I will still be there. But maybe probably the opening will probably be virtual. But I wish I'm there for the opening. Yeah.
Awesome. So, and just to remind people again, that'll be March 6th, and I'll say it also in the closing. So that'll be the opening. I guess where can people find you online to stay connected?
Yeah. Every of my social media pages, KenNWadiogbu. So Ken Nwadiogbu. Yeah. So I think I just changed all my social media page to, my name, because my art is a representative of myself. So I feel, it's only normal to also represent, my art with my name.
Sure.
So yeah, my website, www.kenwadiogbu.com.
Awesome. Cool. So last question, and this is something that I like to ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Ooh, interesting. I've met a lot of amazing artists recently. I've met a lot of amazing artists, but yeah, my brother Arinze.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, Arinze is I think let's tell stories. Let's tell why we create what we create. I know he creates from the same place I create. We all love our works. There's a kind of connection we have with our work. So it would be so awesome to also hear from his point of view, his story, his life, where he's coming from as a Nigerian artist, and his challenges too, because then we have different challenges, completely different challenges, but then we are together like he's a brother. Yeah.
Awesome. Very good. Great choice. I've loved his show last year at Corey Helford, and it's been great to see him on the rise as well. So Ken, thank you so much for coming on and joining me today. It's been a treat having you on.
Thank you so much. I enjoy this. I appreciate this. And, thank you so much. I'm excited.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Ken. Towards the end of our chat, something I think really powerful occurred to me. Just how incredibly community-minded Ken is. Several times throughout the course of our discussion, when he or I would comment about some success that he had, it seemed that in the very next breath, he would say how much he hopes that it's providing inspiration to other young Nigerian artists. Listen back and you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, for instance, when we were talking about how special it was to him to have this show at ThinkSpace, he immediately mentioned how he hoped it would send, a hopeful message to the youth of his community. He just struck me as remarkably selfless, which is something, we could definitely use a lot more of for sure. I'm excited for his new show at ThinkSpace. It'll be debuting a couple weeks after this episode is set to air, opening on March 6th at ThinkSpace's brand new gallery location. The show is called Ubuntu and will feature 20 new works from Ken of varying sizes. Be sure to register your interest with the gallery and, sign up to receive the show preview or to arrange a viewing appointment. I think they'll be having in-person viewing options as well. And of course, follow Ken's Instagram for all the latest on this show as well as what he has beyond. So thanks again to Ken for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. One big way you could help out if you're enjoying the show would be to review it on Apple Podcasts. And of course, just sharing it with your friends. As always, you can contact me through my website at artafairspodcast.com or on Instagram at artafairspodcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.